You're not doing God's work. Not anymore.
Take off your mask, Father.
What's going on,
How are
Antonio?
you?
I'm good, buddy. I'm good. I'm Nigeria Chambers. I'm from Big Go Belt Media. Yes, we're here to talk about your new film, Shaman, which is in theaters and digital August 8th. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling great. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Absolutely, absolutely. There's a lot to tap into with this one. First thing I'm gonna say is somebody owes me some sleep. Because this one had me up all night. Typically films don't, but I don't know what it was about this one that just really held some extra space in my brain energy from shutting down for whatever reason. But I do think honestly I tested to just this sense of atmospheric horror that you all were able to create. Before we tap into deeply into the film, I was looking at the credits. Is the writer Daniel related to you? I would imagine your brother.
That's right. Yes, the writer Daniel Negret is my brother, and one of the producers, Louisa Negret, is my wife. And so this was done kind of very under the radar as a passion project that started kind of with my core family and then kind of grew and became this beast. And I have to say, I'm so sorry that it kept you up all night, but at the same time, I'm so happy to hear that.
Exactly, exactly. Yeah, I do want to talk about the collaboration process with the family for sure. But with that though, because I mean, as this is a family affair, then that means at some point somebody got the idea first, and then somebody was like, "Yeah, let's do it." Somebody possibly said no, and then obviously somebody else also said yes. So who was the sort of the creator of the initial thought, the conversation? Who sent out the first text? How did this all spark from the beginning?
Well, let me go back and say we all grew up in Ecuador. So even though I was born in Colombia, I lived in Ecuador for many years. I traveled around Latin America, but all my teen years were in Ecuador. And so with Daniel, we knew we wanted to go back to Ecuador one day and kind of go back to our roots and go back to the genre of horror that we love. But having said that, it was his initial idea. He wrote this script and was like, "Hey, I've got this idea. I'm writing it." And I immediately kind of perked up and was like, "Man, I'm in. Tell me what I need to do." I'd been doing kind of back-to-back TV episodes, which was great, but I was kind of hungry just for something that was a little more raw, a little more minimalist, a little darker. And so once he wrote it, then I kind of tried to get everyone together and was like, "Guys, I know this is crazy, but can we pull this off? Can we go to a volcano in Ecuador, work with the indigenous community, and shoot a horror film in a way that's never been done before?"
Yeah.
And we did.
You definitely did. Um, I feel like somebody I would say is a horror connoisseur. I feel like the moment you start a film off with kids, you just already know it's going downhill. But truly on an up and up, Jet's performance as Elliot is very special. One may even say at times, and maybe not, because I do think kids are performing younger at a higher rate than ever. But if you kind of go back a little bit, you would say like that role potentially could have been way too much for this kid. And however you want to do it, he did it. However you want to look at it, he did it. So I want to know for you when with the initial conversations with Jet and just telling him, this character Elliot is going to go on one of the craziest rides through religion, and through through religion by way of like the indigenous people, by also by way of like Christianity in a way. I mean, he's getting hit in all corners. So what was that conversation with him initially, and then ultimately, just as the fan, what was your thoughts about his performance?
Well, I'm a huge fan. I think he did so well. And, there was a big search for our Elliot, before we found Jet. And I was getting more and more kind of nervous that we weren't going to find a kid that could do this. Because to your point, there had to be this kind of duality, this kind of innocence and vulnerability and purity, and then this like pure malice. And kind of evil that kind of takes over. And so for an actor, obviously that's a treat, but also a huge challenge. And, in my conversations with Jet, it really started with just let's find a very human kind of journey here and kind of motor to what's going on with Elliot. And that was this idea of a kid that's the son of missionaries and is away from his home. So he's growing up in a place without his friends where he's
Yeah.
feeling kind of isolated by
Yeah.
this landscape. But then also he's maybe starting to feel that he doesn't want to do what his parents do and that he
Yeah.
doesn't want to follow in their footsteps. And I was like, if we can kind of tell that accurately, then being possessed is just like, and a huge version of that. It's a
Yeah.
like, what if this kind of force helped you express that in a really horrific way? But it
And
comes from a very human feeling.
I'm just gonna say, and just that alone, before you talked about any of the supernatural aspect or the horror elements, that's a movie in itself about a kid that doesn't want to do the things the way that the parents wanted him to do it or the path that they laid out. Like that's a journey. That's why I'm like, when you think about it, it's like, hey, so you're basically going to perform three different types of roles in one character here. And that's sometimes a lot for a little kid, but he definitely did that.
Yeah,
Um,
that's what I love about horror too, is that you can take, as you said, something that could just be a drama. It could just be one story, but then you bake it into a roller coaster of scares and thrills and suspense. And
yeah.
that's when I think I get to have fun as a director, and hopefully the audience gets to have fun as well watching it.
Absolutely. So I'm going to ask this question, and I didn't sort of prep it, so in a way of like screening if there's any bit of sensitivity to this. So by all means, if there's something you don't want to answer here, I'm totally okay with it. So because you grew up in Ecuador, and thus being growing up in Ecuador, seeing indigenous people in the land is just something common to you. I'm curious about the element of indigenous people, their presence in Ecuador, but then when you have sort of like the white, Christians come in with their religion, which if you kind of know the American story, that's how things kind of went the other way. I'm kind of wondering sort of what was that conversation and about? Is this something common that sort of happens in terms of the missionary work in this land? And so, sort of, what is the reaction of the native folks in concern of that, or possibly even encouraging? I'm just completely unknown to it, but it was such a loaded thing that happened. It had me kind of wondering, like, wow, is this a thing that's happening in such of a good way, or is this sort of a bad way? Like, how is this received to the native people?
Well, it's a great question and one that's very important to me. I said we can't make this film without the true collaboration of the indigenous community of Chimborazo, which is that region of the volcano. And so, before anything, we had to ask permission of over 80 families of the indigenous community to let us film on their lands. And
Wow,
when we did that, we also opened the door and said, listen, we'd love for you guys to work on the film, not only behind the camera, but also in front of the camera as
wow.
actors. And so I was very fortunate that they all said yes, and that, people like Humberto Morales and Segundo Fuertes, Humberto plays the shaman, and Segundo is like his right-hand man. Like Humberto's uncle was a shaman growing up, and so Humberto had been at some of these cleanses and limpias.
Mm,
And so he became an advisor basically on the film, not just an actor, but bringing to it truthful elements that he had experienced in his childhood. So that's to answer the question of, how involved was the indigenous community. To me, they were 100% involved from beginning to end. In terms of the missionaries, yeah, I think it is, a film that explores the danger, right, of certainty and the danger, the potential hypocrisy of trying to believe that you have all the answers and that you as a person are a savior. I think that's when trouble could, happen. And I think that the film is a bit about that. And growing up in Ecuador, I knew people and friends who were missionaries, and I always had this kind of dueling feeling where they themselves were oftentimes wonderful people and had good intentions, but at the same time we're causing a certain damage and impact to the culture by trying to convert, the indigenous community. And so I think that the film does explore that and does
Yeah.
explore that danger of when do you go too far, and how dangerous is it to try and impose your faith on someone else in a land that's not your own.
Yeah. Ooh, thank you for that answer, man. I appreciate it. And that means I may have to weather the storm once again and check it out from that perspective for sure. But I will say honestly, in Sarah's performance as Candice, a lot of that is translated, and I do think that religion can be weaponized. But I also think religion, which the one really beautiful thing I loved about the missionary aspect of this film is the question what you may think when something is so heavily preached to you that you think you may know, but ultimately you have other questions in terms of like, is this actually truthful or not? Is this relevant to my day to day? So, yeah. I'm going to wrap here by just asking you one final quick question. Shaman, it's in theaters on demand and digital August 8th. I truly suggest you see this in theaters with a group of folks. I think this is a great um, uh, date night horror film flick outing, however you want to put it. Even if you go by yourself, beware. But nonetheless, it's definitely something you want to see on the big screen. But I want to know for you because you put a lot of hard work into this. You did the work in the background, having indigenous people involved. This was a family project that y'all all got together to get to this point. But when it comes from you, your mouth, it just hits a little different. Why is this the film that you feel folks need to go to the theaters to see, or if not on digital August 8th?
I think, now more than ever, it's a time to support independent film.
Yes, sir.
It's a time to support Latino film
Yes,
and Latino
sir.
art. And so for me, that alone is a reason for people to go. But personally, beyond that, this is a film that's going to make you scream. It's going to make you hold your breath. It's going to make you hide your eyes, but it's also going to make you think. It is a film that celebrates this idea of faith, and everyone can have their own faith, but warns of the danger of trying to impose your faith or being certain that you have the answers, because sometimes you'll encounter something that you're not prepared for. And that's what Shaman is.
Fantastic. Antonio, congratulations on this film. Tell everybody involved, family, cast members, everybody, congratulations on this one. I had a great time watching it. And as you mentioned, Shaman in theaters on demand digital August 8th. It's been a pleasure to talk to you today. Thank you so much for your time.
Such a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.